Katie wraps up, let's just make sure, was there questions along the way about anything that we presented today, that thoughts, concerns? We don't mind objections. In fact, Katie welcomes difficult questions. We're not trying to get you to believe anything. We'd like you to try it in your lives, but we're not asking you to believe. And it's important to know that this is not a religious presentation, even though today, and I think this is the only diamond cutter level that uses Buddhist picture. And so we mentioned the Buddhist old picture and some ideas, and that's where those ideas come from anyway.
What's the?
Oh, you learn everything.
Yeah.
Oh, like this.
We can find out and get the actual name.
I could ask Adam and find out.
So when you say that there's 3 types of addictions, what there really is there's 2 types of addictions that all stem from a philosophical place. Sort of my takeaway. Like you can't really separate physical from a philosophical addiction deep down, or emotional from a philosophical deep down.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, that was it.
Yeah, and I think that's why, if you work on
Difficult to separate it out and have pinpoint a philosophical addiction that didn't tie into some other kind of
That's what it seems like.
behavior, thought pattern, or something like that.
Or vice versa is my thinking. Like you can't address anything like overeating. I'm addicted to my cell phone is always going to link back to some philosophical issue.
In the diamond cutter system,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Right.
And that's why we think it's different than maybe trying Jenny Craig weight loss program or even
not to say that Jenny Craig won't work.
And you should definitely try her.
Yeah.
And there's the $5,000 lady here in town who works for a lot of people, but I have noticed that some people who've tried that program and spent all that money slowly creep back into their old habits.
You know, I have an interesting comment, I suppose, with the 3 critters in the middle of the wheel. There's first the ignorant pig, right, which was the ignorant worldview, and then came the snake, which was the anger. I remember talking to a guy that I had worked with, and he was talking about his nephew and how this child's parents separated when he was very young, and he got angry, and he kept trying to, what this guy said was he was trying to fill this hole in him with anything he could get. So like he'd always have a lot of desires for new toys, say, and new things, as if like an addiction, But I suppose what comes up for me is that as a child, does he have the intellectual capacity to understand what's going on with him? How can he be past the ignorant worldview without having developed the intellectual capacity or the emotional intelligence to know what had happened to him?
Yeah, I think life experience, sometimes we have to go through life experience before it would be, if a child grew up in an atmosphere that was people were thinking this way from the beginning, that things are coming from you. I mean, that's the idea that I have, is that the world would be different. If everyone thought that way, then people wouldn't hurt each other. A child wouldn't be brought up in an environment where people would be hurting each other and the child would get, damaged in that way, maybe.
Right, but we have addictions. We're talking about addictions. This is the world we live in.
So, but a child could not probably have the capacity to understand these tools if they weren't brought up with them. So
right, that's kind of, and even, I suppose it seems like kind of an advanced way of worldview. Perhaps it's not.
Step on a bug, I get my ribs hurt. If it happened instantaneously, we would all understand it, but it doesn't. So age isn't really relevant sometimes.
Which I taught. We did a kids program where we actually presented these ideas to them, not on addiction, but on the pen and the 4 steps. And then somehow I ended up with the 4 to 7-year-olds a lot. And so we taught them the pen, but we did it through plays, we did it through all sorts of ways. And then we taught them the 4 steps. So, we kept saying, do the 4 steps to get your new favorite toy. And finally, one little girl was like, well, can I use the 4 steps to get my parents to stop fighting? And so she was starting to get that, they could apply it to more than their life. And I was shocked at how, almost because they were like a blank slate, the kids could almost understand the pen and the 4 steps easier
That is true. And I was
Yeah.
actually thinking that when I was younger, I had more sort of a knowledge of that. My dad, I was trying to remember the exact quote the other day, actually. He said that when I was like 8 and we were driving around, I like piped up like, why do people hurt each other? Or something like that. Like it doesn't make sense to us when we're young that that people would hurt each other.
Doesn't make sense now.
It doesn't make sense, but I got used to it. Then I got used to it along the way.
Yeah, we got desensitized.
Yeah,
But
but
we didn't get to the heart of your
yeah, I
question.
suppose, the piece is, it's always easy to look at others and see what's going on with them. It's very difficult to look at ourselves
Yeah.
and see what's going on with us.
Exactly.
That capacity, of ignorant worldview, the pig part of the wheel. I just keep thinking about what that guy had said about his nephew.
Yeah.
Watching his nephew try to fill this hole in him, but nothing was working. Nothing was bringing this kid peace. And it's just, so I'm just sort of, I'm just kind of putting that out there. I'm not really looking for any answers
Yeah.
or anything like that,
Brainstorm.
but just sort of, that's a piece of addiction.
It is.
As this
Yeah.
child grows, I don't know what ended up happening to him, but if he, perhaps it would take, well into his adulthood to get past what was going on with him,
I think so.
to find, to get back to that spot where he, to be able to develop correct worldview, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're right.
I lost touch with that employer, so I don't know what ended up happening with that kid.
Thank you,
All
Ben.
right.
Yeah.
So thanks for your comments and questions, you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so we covered a lot in a short period of time, and just in case
Mhm.
one specific piece, really stood out to you, I'm just going to quickly go through what we learned. We learned liberty from addictions. What would it feel like if we were free from our bad habits? I have a really heavy backpack back there. You can go pick it up. And we were traveling last week, so I had this heavy backpack on, and things have gotten a little bit heavier in general, so kind of hard through the airport. Suddenly, my husband took it and put it on. Suddenly, I felt like I could do anything. I could run to the gate and be on time for the plane. And I think that's how you feel when you're free of your bad habits, when you don't have them holding you back from reaching your goals or solving your problems. Then, in order to know if we have an addiction or not, we need to know what those potential objects could look like. And then, of course, we learn the foundational tools, the PEN thing and the 4 steps. And then we talked briefly about the wheel and the self-perpetuating cycle of the wheel, and most importantly, how to break the wheel and get in an upward spiral. And then, whoops, there it is again. And then we talked about the addictive environment and the 4 flowers, which are the 4 ways a seed can open. Addiction diamond deals, which I actually find really interesting because do I have to choose between having a cup of coffee and being tired, or having a cup of coffee and being energized? Is there a way that I could have a cup of coffee and only get energized and not have anything bad happen? Is there a way I could not have a cup of coffee and still feel energized? So anytime you start to feel stressed out between 2 decisions, you're in a diamond deal. You're forgetting that there's a third option, which is to plant seeds. You guys created a plan to take home. And that leads me to this. So, the whole point of this is, yeah, it's great to hear about the 4 steps and the PEN thing, but don't take our word for it. It doesn't really work if you just say, oh, that sounds good. If you really want to test this system, if you really want to see if, we're all just making stuff up, or if it really works, then go home and just try the 4 steps. I mean, the worst thing that'll happen is that you're nice to someone for a couple of weeks. But what's going to happen after you try the 4 steps and you get your first success is you'll start to realize that this system works. And so right now I'm reading a book about this character, and this character is completely average. Nothing special about them. They're not even especially intelligent. They're kind of more annoying. But this one regular person ends up being the only person who can really help the whole world, who ends up being the person to save the world. So what's really interesting, how this applies to us, is if we start using the 4 steps to become successful, to overcome our addictions, to fix our relationships, we become a real leader. We become someone. And then what happens? Well, I also like to read zombie books. And, zombie books always start the same way. One person gets bit, and then that person bites another person, and then that person bites 10 people, and soon the whole world is zombies. Which we don't want zombies, but we do want 4-step zombies. I gotta work on that. So anyway, what happens is if you get successful using the 4 steps, somebody else is gonna see it, ask you what you're doing, and you bite them. Not really, but you help teach them the 4 steps so then they can get what they want. And pretty soon, just like the zombies, nobody remembers how the zombies even started because the whole world is zombies. Pretty soon, we can become a world where everybody is using the 4 steps to get what they want. And nobody remembers how it started, but really it started with you. You were the first 4-step zombie. So if you are successful, if you work on making yourself happy and getting what you want through helping someone else, then you can make a difference. So success is making a difference. All right, so thank you all for coming to Diamond X Level 6, and we'll keep in touch with you guys and keep us updated on your success so you can become an example for all of us.